Well, next, we talk about storytelling and story making, but doing it in an addressable world. How is this new world evolving? How are we creating stories? How are we creating content? Well, we have got a fantastic panel here. We're going to take you through it, guide you through any of the murky or muddy waters, and bring you out the other side with some wonderful insight and inspiration. So to lead our panel is a good friend of mine. It is Nikki Mendonca, the president of OMD EMEA. Let's give her a big round of applause. Woo!
Okay, those steps are always too large. And anyway, it's Mendonca. Sorry, there is a cedilla on my C, but everyone always forgets it, including myself. We have got a fantastic lineup. So without further ado, we have Lean from Liberty Global. Please come up on stage. We've then got Fabio from Bacardi. We've then got Fabrice from Renault Italy. Thank you, Fabrice. And then the wonderful Ben Wood from Facebook. So I thought that earlier panel was absolutely excellent. Nick Manning, I'll give you your scores later, panel running scores, but I thought there was absolutely excellent, great heated debate. We might pick up actually on some of those topics should we have time. But we've got half an hour to go through story making and storytelling in an addressable world. And of course, story making as well as storytelling, because we all know that we are fast moving in an experiential marketing world, and telling stories is not enough. We have to make sure that our consumers are part and parcel of the stories that we create. In fact, a fundamental part of story making. In terms of some of the topics that we want to touch on today, obviously in terms of storytelling, I think we can all agree that it starts with the power of data and the power of data analytics. It was hinted at actually this morning in terms of now the prerequisite for every client to have a DMP to ensure that first, second, third-party data is properly leveraged and analysed to tell more powerful stories. So I think we'll kick off actually with Lean from Liberty Global, who has a wonderful job title, VP Consumer DNA, which I absolutely love. And if you can, I'd like you to expand a little bit on how you leverage data to create more of a consumer-first proposition at Liberty Global for the brands that you run.
Well, we obviously have a lot of data available, and these data are many times available in numbers, in studies, in a lot of studies. But what we feel is that using those data, we have to actually get even closer to our customers. We have a lot of data, but consumers are a bit like, I always say, icebergs. You know, there's only a little tip sticking out of the water, and there is a big part underneath. And a lot of our data only cover the tip that's above the water. What we need to do is also get underneath and understand how consumers feel, not only how they use our products, what the products do with them, but also about the emotional reward they get from our products. Because working in connectivity and now also in entertainment, we tend to think that connectivity is a very basic, commoditized product, but it's a very emotional product. I don't know whether you have teenagers at home and what happens when the Wi-Fi breaks down, but I can tell you, and working in telecom, they even think I can fix it. It's a highly emotional product. So I think in order to be able to tell, we need to start actually telling stories, I think. And to do that, we'll have to break some of the category conventions. You know, one important one is that the telecom category is all about a jungle of choices. There's so many offers, there's so many choices, there's so many products. And then there's all these providers that say they're the best. And consumers are lost in this jungle of choices. So our first mission is actually to make more simpler consumer propositions. Then secondly, which I already alluded to, which is going beyond the product features. We're talking all the time about replay TV and so many gigabytes you can use, and no consumer has any idea what a gigabyte means and what they can do with that. So we'll have to get from, talking about features and products into functional benefits and then getting into the emotional area. Because believe it or not, this morning we talked about fears. This category, the telco category, added 2 important fears. No Wi-Fi available and no battery. Yeah. So actually when you think about the Maslow
no battery
pyramid,
is a definite one, yeah.
When you think about the Maslow pyramid, we're sitting underneath food and drinks. So it's a very emotional category, and we'll have to start telling stories about that. It's not about the task, it's not about making the phone call, it's about telling what the phone call means to you. So getting into the emotional area. And then the third one, I think, which is really important, is that this industry needs to go from consumer understanding to consumer empathy. We need to learn how to step in our clients' footsteps and understand not only what they hear and say and do, but also how they feel about it. And we need to do that in terms of product, we need to do that in terms of service, the service we provide, but I also think we need to do that in terms of communication. We can't overload them with communication. We'll have to find the right moments in time with the right piece of communication. And that, I think, is 3 big challenges that the category has ahead of them.
That's very clear. And in terms of being able to measure that migration from sort of product shouty messages that we know and love from telcos to more emotional consumer value proposition, how are you measuring that transition?
Well, at the moment, we have just started our transition. So we still need to think about how we're going to measure that really well. At the moment, what we're doing is we're doing standard brand tracking, we're doing this type of studies, which I think are in many cases largely outdated, because consumers don't look at brands anymore in a very static view, and they don't want to spend 30 minutes filling out the questionnaire online with all sorts of strange questions about a brand. So I think, measuring that will have to evolve. And it's not only about brand tracking, but it's also about NPS, and it's also about going underneath the surface and doing qualitative interviews with your customers, doing more for your customers. And all these things have to gel, and really they're actually pieces in a patchwork where the consumer sits in the middle that will help us to really understand that. And then there is obviously the challenge of getting that throughout an organization, because organizations are pretty siloed. So having a consumer lead the design and the consumer-centric thinking needs to get into the culture, which is not an easy thing.
And you have to, how do you go about sort of getting that buy-in, say, from other departments within the organization to be able to centralize the data to then better use it and make it truly actionable?
Well, I think we'll have to convince them through success. I'm talking regularly to the product people, and they always start from their product, and we just have to be very mandatory, and in each meeting start from the consumer and ask for the consumer evidence. My background is in fast-moving consumer goods. I worked for 15 years in Procter & Gamble, and this is a company where consumer first is a strange thing to say there. If I would say I'm working in a company trying to get the consumer first, they would look at me and say, what? So it's there, it's in the culture, and that's a big journey to take. So I think it's everybody's responsibility to first ask the question, is this relevant for our customer? And in the telecom business, there's a lot of acquisition going on, but it's now becoming about our own customers, because there's not a lot of fish in the ocean anymore. First it was blue, then it became red, and now it's almost empty, because there's fierce competition going on, and every customer you leave doesn't go back in the ocean. It goes to a competitor.
Absolutely.
And, so it's very important that we start focusing on our own clients and our own customers, and not only on acquiring customers.
Completely. Now on to Fabio. In terms of excellence in storytelling, you also have another very interesting title, International Creative Excellence Director.
Yeah,
love it.
It's been the subject of many conversations
at dinner time
with friends saying, what the hell do you do? So that's kind of how we started the conversation.
Job title's getting more interesting. How do you go about more effective story making and storytelling at Bacardi?
So my perspective, so my background is originally in advertising. The reason why I got into advertising in the first place is to do with storytelling. I remember being a kid going to the cinema, and I would get very upset if we got late and we didn't get the advertising trailers. And truly, that was my passion. At that time, you would get the best of the best ads running at that time because it's expensive, etc., etc. So I think the industry has a history of doing very good storytelling over the years. As humans, we've been doing storytelling for the last 40,000 years. The first paintings in caves date back to that point. So what is really changing right now is all the possibilities we have at our disposal. And they're very, very positive. We are embracing them. People in this room, I'm sure, are embracing them every day. But they can also become a distraction to what the main objective and the job at hand is. So my focus on that is on making sure that innovation is not for the sake of it. It's not innovation that actually just detracts from the message, or it's just about stalking consumers, delivering multiple messages that don't add up to a story. It's all about emotion. Emotion is still the single driver that we see, especially for a brand like Bacardi, where it makes a difference. And the other aspect is as well is blocking. So we have become very, very good and wise and astute about targeting our consumers in a way that was impossible even 6 months ago. But our consumers are becoming much better as well at blocking our messages. I know you're talking about ad blockers here, which obviously is a big topic. I'm talking about people purely blocking out our messages, kind of filtering out brands. I saw a piece of research on Friday where the brand content retention has gone in the space of the last 18 months to something like 2.5 seconds. We've been talking to one of our friends on Facebook, like, make sure the message is 5 seconds. That's enough
5 seconds
already.
is even too long, yeah.
It's too long, it's a history. So, but what happens, what is successful is when in the value exchange with our consumers, we give something to communicate to our brands that is of value. And I'm not talking about necessarily just utility, I'm talking about emotion as well. People welcome branded content when it's well done, when it has a point of view, when it has Super Bowl kind of commercials, digital campaigns that really revolve around giving utility consumers or kind of helping them in one way or the other. Those are all the elements that in the storytelling, with all the possibilities we have, we can actually make a big difference. And the final thing, I think, in terms of making sure we have the right concoction coming from Bacardi as well, is culture, popular culture. We have been an industry that actually have made popular culture over the years. We have made songs go to the number one. We have created characters that made it into films. And that, I worry when the conversation is moving on to a point where those things are seen as secondary. I think that the parallel for me is cinema. Again, I'm a cinema fan. 3D cinema, for instance, was more of a gimmick rather than a creative kind of expression. And that's the reason why it fell, and that's the reason why it's on the way out. So how can we make our brands relevant and use technology to make those stories more immersive, but without forgetting what our objectives for the brands are?
And how do you actually stop some of your teams globally from being seduced by the latest format and getting distracted? I mean, how do you actually stop that from happening, which could be considered as wasted marketing spend?
Before I stop the team, I have to stop myself sometimes. That's true. We all here in this industry, I guess, at this point in time, if we hadn't left like 5 years ago, it's because we, one way or the other, embrace technology and innovation. I am an advocate of it. I think that it's really important to always think what is the value exchange in that adoption of technology. And it's absolutely fine to trial and see error and then adjust. We saw about failure today and things like that. We pilot a lot with Facebook. We've done lots of things where truly we don't know whether they're going to be a success or not, and that's absolutely fine. I think what is important is to clearly to learn as you go along, optimize, and really utilize again the things that you see have worked, but always in the context of what is your brand purpose, what is your brand objective. And if we have something that looks amazing but it has nothing to do with the brand, leave it alone, don't touch it, because it will just confuse the message. I will not do anything for your brand.
And then in terms of boosting relevance, how do you actually manage the sort of balance between working and non-working media when actually a plethora of creative treatments now, arguably, need to be produced to be able to get that consumer relevance? How do you manage that at Bacardi?
Our approach has changed a lot. We are going through kind of a rethinking of this topic in a number of ways. 2 years ago, the whole industry was talking about content blizzard. I remember every presentation, people nodding, I can see. We are moving to fewer but bigger. And I know to some in other rooms might seem as, what is he talking about? But actually, when we see the impact of our pieces of content, 80% of the impact we make in any measurements that you want to define is usually given by 15%, even less than 20% of the content we produce. So for a brand like Bacardi, it's about those moments of truth when people get face to face. We had a conversation outside how a famous tree called El Coco, which is very close, is the one on the Bacardi label. You saw many years ago how that actually had an impact on you and the perception of the brand. Those are the things that we want to create, is a moment of truth where the brand plays a role that is really, really well defined. And
part of the cultural DNA, that's to your earlier point, part of the cultural fabric, so that it's ingrained into people's behaviours.
Absolutely.
But I also think part to the person, if brands can be more than brands and are really meaningful and sort of opening from being a brand that delivers a task in somebody's life to opening it up to the life frame where your brand sits and the role the brand plays in the life, not only in the task, because that's very small. Then I think naturally you get more to the emotions and you get more into the storytelling, because then you're getting into people's lives, and then you go to the highest level where your brand can actually change
more than just a service, as we said earlier this morning. It's more than
where
a service.
A brand can actually change your life,
Yeah.
Fabrice, moving on to Renault and some of the changes that you've actually made with Renault Italy. What I thought was interesting, it was mentioned earlier on this morning as well, was the fact that now it is understood that any marketing head needs to sit pretty much across all consumer touch points and actually have, dare I say it, control over all consumer touch points, and particularly the importance of current customers and customer relationship marketing. Can you talk us through some of the things that you have done to successfully integrate the whole of the CRM pillar within advertising and marketing?
Yeah, one of the challenges in the car industry is being able to be in touch with the customer in the moment where he is on his way to change his car. Of course, we're not talking about it's a very specific product. In average, you change maybe your car every 7-8 years. So, of course, it's very important to be at the right time, at the right moment, in the right place, and to be able to touch this customer in the right way. So the idea was, just because digital, everything is changing nowadays. Of course, all the customers are going on the internet before it's all totally integrated in the purchasing process. Before going to a dealer, to a
yes,
showroom.
Oliver actually said earlier, didn't he, that the sale happens online?
Yeah, we are not in a sector where people buy online, but all the purchasing process is done, of course, nowadays online. So it's very important to be there, of course, but to be present with accurate offers, with the right message. So the experience we had in Italy is that, okay, in order to mix storytelling, advertising with data, and to have this efficient CRM, the idea was to create a unique department making work all together, advertising, CRM, digital, and social. So we were the first in Europe within the national sales company, the Renault national sales company, to develop this kind of unique department. Objective, of course, is to control the whole chain from media planning through the action until, of course, all the reporting. Advantages are so many, of course, in the sense that we have the same people working on the media planning, on the action, and on the measurement of the actions.
Almost like through the whole funnel,
right.
so to speak.
Yeah. The process. And at the end, during the deployment of the action, we are able to measure, to know what is working, what is not working, to come back and to maybe to change the media plan, so that at the end, of course, it's much more efficient, and the results are very important. We raised the conversions, the conversion in sales from all these leads by 3 or 4 points, which is huge in the car industry. But of course, this is the first step. Now we have much more data. We are talking about data here. All these data allow us to work with much more accurate and precise tools, data management platforms, in order to go far beyond, to create clusters of customers in order to address the right message and, of course, to measure the results. So the objective is really trying to get the good message to every single person. And the message is not the same. The way we are communicating is not the same. The offer is not the same. So, of course, we are getting much more efficient.
So proper dynamic messaging. Yeah. For some of the chaps in the audience, can you talk about maybe the watch-outs and the do's and don'ts when it comes to creating the DMP and properly being able to leverage it? Because obviously you have one of the most evolved approaches and we're one of the first to market. Any kind of do's and don'ts that you could sort of share with the audience?
Well, it's a never-ending process. We began we started with this organization 3 or 4 years 3 years ago now. And of course, first stages are it's quite difficult at the first place to make all the people work together because, of course, everybody has different objectives. If I'm talking about an action, we have a media plan, then we define the right action for this media plan because we have a specific target for a specific model, car line. And then we are measuring all the action and the results of it. But we can have results, good results because of the right media plan. We can have bad results because of the media plan or because of the creativity. So we must be able to make people from media, from advertising, and from CRM department work together. That's maybe
much more dynamic measurement, which has changed.
It seems quite easy to say so, but it's very difficult to achieve. And the OMD team, which is fully integrated in our organization here in Italy, really helps us to achieve this objective.
That's good to hear. Yeah. Very happy with that. And last but by no means least, Ben, we've talked a lot about how potentially we need new rules of storytelling in a mobile-first world. And I think you guys are probably at the cutting edge of how best to achieve global branding when it comes to mobile-first relationships. Would you like to talk through the sort of secrets of success or maybe even some advertisers that are doing it well, not so well?
Yeah, I will. As luck would have it, we've got some slides.
Brilliant.
And we've got some case studies that hopefully will resonate with the audience. I think...
Can you tell her to pipe down?
I'm competing with someone much louder than me outside. So listen, success on mobile is really pretty simple. but it is about disregarding perhaps some of the old rules of advertising. And I think what's important is, of course, some TV advertising works in our feed, but truthfully, the best way to approach advertising on Facebook, especially video advertising in our feed, is to look at it as a brand new canvas and to realize that new rules apply, realize that perhaps people don't have the same amount of kind of attention. You're leaning forward, you're scrolling through with your thumb pretty quickly. You're not leaning back in a sort of television, for example, consumption behavior. And so we do have some kind of quick rules, and there are some great examples of brands that are doing this well. Thankfully, they're the brands that are with me today. The first is, capture attention quickly. So perhaps in those old 30-second or 60-second advertising narratives that were built for TV or cinema, we kind of built to a climax where the brand was revealed at the end. Now, the secret is to try and really grab someone's attention right at the start of the ad. I've got a great example from Liberty, from their Virgin Media brand, where they use the brand icon straight away to kind of grab attention. The second is designing for sound off. I think it's worth remembering that the vast majority of people who first engage with video on our platform are doing it in a sound-off environment, right? So we are testing sound on to see how different cultures and people around the world respond to that. But right now, the vast majority is sound off. So I've got some nice examples as to how you can approach that. But really a really simple approach might be taking your TV ad and just adding some subs over the top to make those key points so that people can understand what's in the ad. Frame your visual story, by which I mean remember that you're not in a rectangle. You're in a kind of, you're in a long mobile phone screen. It's not as big. It's not like a cinema screen or a TV screen. So think about how you edit the video so it works in that format. We now have ad solutions which allow you to use that full screen. Embrace those because they make more impact. And last but not least, and perhaps this is the most important thing because things are changing so fast, just play around. Allow part of your budget to be there for innovation, for testing, for trying things out. So I'll just jump into some examples. Guys, I'm going to go quite quick, but dive in if you want to add any colour. The first is, this is some work from Virgin Media in the UK. It features Usain Bolt, but what you'll see is that it's Usain Bolt's right at the front. It's edited much more quickly. This works, by the way, in a sound on and a sound off environment because obviously that clock is quite effectively conveying what's happening there. So this ad is really using those rules of think about sound off, think about grabbing attention really quickly. Here's some work from Renault. Now this is really subtle, but it's really important. So what Renault have done here is they've taken TV advertising, they've collapsed it down, they've re-edited it, and they've added subs over the top to help people understand what's happening. So they are building specific feed-friendly creative on the basis that they know that people won't be able to, or won't be likely to listen to that ad, and we know that that drives engagement and drives performance. Here's some great work from Bacardi. So what Bacardi have done here is they've worked with a specialist creative agency, a business called Kenzo Digital, and they've built beautiful, really high engagement advertising that works in a sound-off environment, specifically not just for Facebook, but also for Instagram. This was trying to drive engagement and awareness around an experiential event that you guys, I think was it Chicago? No, Brooklyn. Yes. But again, it's about building for feed and thinking about how you're going to really grab attention. Here's Pepsi. Those guys aren't on they're not on the panel today, but this is just a great example of video using the full screen rather than just pumping into the feed. And here's some more work from Renault utilising our carousel ads. So just using the fact that you can actually start to play around and scroll through different frames to deliver more information about the brand. And last but not least, this is some great work again by Bacardi, where they've been playing around with the kind of 360 format to allow people to really engage and experiment. And I think to that point about playing more and just testing things out, what we find with stuff like 360 video is it's a great way just to get people to come in, play, experiment, and test things out. So they're just some examples from Facebook and some perhaps 4 rules as to how we would recommend people approach the new canvas, which is kind of video and mobile.
Excellent. I think lots and lots of rich examples in there, hopefully for some people to nick and take away. We need to round up a little bit now, so we've got 2 minutes. If anyone's asking, anyone's got a burning question to ask. Yes?
Guys, I think I've just noticed while you were all talking about your respective brands that you represent quite a broad spectrum of everything that we use and consume, but hopefully not at the same time. You don't want to be watching telly whilst drinking, driving and chatting to your mates about the driving whilst drinking film thing. But what's interesting is we hear a lot about making the communication job easier through addressability. We've heard a lot about walking in clients' footsteps, the empathy. There's an argument to say that we have to make people care about the products as well. So it's not just enough to reach the person at the right time at the right place, and cars are a good example, but it could equally apply to anything. Facebook as a brand itself, not just as a platform for advertisers, but how do you get people to care? The argument being, could I sell one of your products to a consumer if I know enough about them at any time? Because that's, as a marketer, that's what I see my job as, is try to sell something, even if the audience doesn't know they want it.
So that's an interesting one. How do you make people care? Who wants to take that?
So I'm happy to respond to that. This is a little analogy that I use every now and then, but when you go to a museum and there's a nice portrait there and the painting is looking at you, you move to the left, you move to the right, that painting is still looking at you. It fascinates me for some reason. It would be a bit weird if then you go to the street and then the painting starts following you on the streets. And that's sometimes what we do as advertisers. We kind of confuse that customized, kind of deep targeted message with stalking people. And the caring of the brand, the point you're making, which is incredibly valid, is about changing that exchange value back to giving something that makes people feel something about your brand. That's the most important thing, because anything else can be copied. For now, even an iPhone, we see the S8 and out, and so everything that we do. I spent the whole day yesterday judging, and it's incredible how many case studies rely on just best practices. It's good that business adopt that, but that's not enough, because someone else will do it. If it's not today, it's tomorrow. It's how do we build something to make the brand equity long-lasting and much more appealing than the competitors.
And I know we're out of time, but just about 30 seconds. But I think to build on that, though, the most simple, and you know this, the most simple true rule of all is you just have to absolutely start with the consumer. Don't start with, I feel I should be doing programmatic, or don't start with, I need to be testing out that new ad unit, or, I think it'd be cool if I could do some VR. I think you've got to start with the consumer, and you've got to understand what's going to motivate, engage, make that consumer passionate and interested in your brand, and then think about what solutions from a media perspective are going to deliver against that. But I think it's being absolutely consumer-centric at all times.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's not forget about product relevance too. People care about you when you present a role in their life. And it's not about the brand only. I think the magic is in having a powerful brand that is built on a fantastic product. And my example that I always use, if I can, is the Pampers brand. I worked on Pampers. Obviously, it's babies, it's emotional, it's engaging. But still, the whole brand is not about containing pee. It is to a certain extent, and it's superior dry baby butts. But it's what the dry baby butts mean into somebody's life. It means that the baby is going to sleep well. So the parent is going to sleep well, and the baby is going to go into a happy day. It's about the baby that can move well, so he's developing well. Mm-hmm. And so it's much broader than only the brand. It's the brand that needs to be meaningful, but is supported by a superior product. I still believe. It's maybe a bit old-fashioned, but I think the product still needs to be strong and good enough to support the care for the brand and the product.
That is. It's having a very clear, differentiated brand purpose that then comes through your story making and your storytelling. So I would just like to thank my panel, because I thought they were excellent today. So huge round of applause for them. Thank you.